You're listening to Miss Style, Strength, and Grace with Deidra Murphy. This is your one-stop shop for style, fashion, health, and fitness. Deidra's passion is to help empower women to reach their fullest potential, both inside and out. Deidra and her guests will be discussing how to develop your style, health, and lifestyle hacks to energize your day and inspire you to keep reaching higher levels of success. Deidra is a professional fashion stylist, health guru, and Mrs. Washington 2017. It's time to get open and honest with Deidra.
Well, hello and welcome today, listeners of the Miss Style, Strength, and Grace podcast. I am very excited to announce today's podcast guest, and her name is Olivia Berg. She happens to actually live in my same hometown, but we're doing this virtually just because it's so hard to coordinate our schedules. But Olivia is just a girl that happened to quit her corporate job. She sold everything she owned, and then she embarked on a year-long journey traveling across the United States in a vintage Airstream, one of those silver cool pull behind, or was it a pull behind, or was it
like a pop can? Yeah, just a trailer.
So that year led to a year of personal reflection, and that fueled her entrepreneurial fire. And since then, she started several successful companies, including a high-end event venue and a digital marketing company focused on healthcare ClickFunnels. She's a passionate, driven, startup-obsessed entrepreneur that excels in relationship-focused environments. Her zone of genius is taking companies from conception to scalability with a people-focused and systems-oriented approach. Her work has been featured in publications throughout the United States, and she enjoys fusing creativity as well as congeniality to industries like healthcare and technology in order to help her clients and projects stand out. On a side note, she can also bring down the house in karaoke on any given day. So, yes. Hello and welcome, Olivia. I'm so glad to have you here.
Hello. That was a great introduction. Nice work.
Oh, thanks. Well, let's go ahead and just dive in. Why don't you give my listeners a little snapshot of who you are, what you do in your current life?
Yeah, well, I mean, you hit it out of the park with that introduction. But yeah, I live here in the desert region of Eastern Washington, and I like to joke that I party for a living, but my primary, I guess I do a lot of different things, but probably most recognizably, I have a high-end event venue here in Eastern Washington, but I dabble in a lot of other stuff. I really like technology and social media, really focused a little bit more on kind of some, I don't know, quote unquote, boring industries. I guess you're married to a doctor, so I shouldn't say that, but dentists and doctors and healthcare and things like that, but applying ClickFunnels and social media strategy to those industries. And the occasional karaoke. You hit it on the head.
Well, and you're a mom, and you also had White House Aesthetics, which was your... Describe what it was again, or
design. That's how I started out. So my entry point was a little bit more aesthetic focused. So design, I really enjoy, flipped a few houses, general contracted a couple properties. I really like interior design and more from like the architectural sense in building unconventional dwellings. Obviously, if I lived in a 180 square foot Airstream for a year, you got to be a little bit crazy to do that, especially with a kiddo. And I'm a mom. That's my favorite job. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she is a Spitfire, so that keeps me busy. She'll be in first grade this year, so that's kind of...
Shut up. I can't believe she's already going to be in first grade. Like, make her stop growing up.
I agree. Don't blink. I actually held her back. She could be in second grade. So, it's crazy how fast that goes by, but she's a blast. We're having fun this summer she learned how to paddleboard the other day, and she's pretty good at that. And, she's a good time. She's my little bestie.
I love it. She's so you hit the nail on the head with that little Spitfire. She definitely is. I can see that for sure. And I don't
No
even know
idea
her that
where
well.
she gets it from. No
I
idea.
have no
where she
idea.
gets
Yeah,
it from.
can't figure that out. When I was trying to come up with questions on what to ask you today, I feel like there's so many questions I want to ask, and I'm like, okay, but I don't want to bore my listeners with like 3 hours long of conversation here. But I do want to know, let's start with a little bit of your journey and your upbringing. Like, what sparked this entrepreneurial spirit within you? Obviously there has to be a catalyst for that.
Yeah, I love that question. I get asked that semi-frequently. So I definitely grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I grew up on my family all farmed, and my grandpa started lots of different companies, from golf courses to a worm farm operation. He was an engineer. Is
it going to be called I Got Worms?
I don't know. He did some weird stuff, but
please tell me you get that Dumb and Dumber reference. Sorry. So yeah,
I don't know what it was called, but that would have been some branding genius right there. So anyways, yeah, they've just always been fairly entrepreneurial. Obviously, I was not afraid of the struggle of startup life and the uncertainty of owning your own business, because I mean, farming is like baptism by fire. So I mean, one day you're living on beans and top ramen, and the next day you're raking in the dough, and one year you have fungus in the soil, and the next year, you have a bumper crop. So it's very up and down. And I watched that and lived through that and watched them excel. And my dad and my grandpa are definitely my role models for just, I guess, being entrepreneurs and hard workers and grit and all of that. So I guess that's really it. I mean, I don't have a business degree or anything. I didn't necessarily think that I would be an entrepreneur or own my own companies. That wasn't I don't know, on my radar per se, but that's kind of where I got it from, I think.
Yeah. Well, you said that you don't have a business degree. You have your degree in what? Psychology. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So,
which I think is almost more useful than
really? Let's talk a little bit about that. Like, why did you go into psychology, but then why did you decide to up and change and go more into the business startup?
Yeah, well, I just thought I thought I wanted to be a mental health counselor, and I did do that for a while. My first career job was in substance abuse counseling. So that's my background, but I think psychology is fascinating, and you figure out how to work with different people. And, I mean, I don't want to say manipulate people, but you figure out how to, meet people where they're at and build relationships that are strategic and understand personality types and all of these things that are super valuable, I think, when you are trying to start businesses, and, all the things that go along with that, especially service-based businesses like I own. So I don't know. That was just it's just what happened, I guess. And I hate numbers, so I couldn't. The math of a business degree, that was too much for me.
I can't. I just don't want to think about numbers right now. I want to just all flow naturally.
Yeah, you don't even want to know how that. Yeah.
Oh, no, I totally understand that. So, but it makes sense though that psychology is a huge background for you, just because I know when I've seen you interacting with people, whether it's at events or networking opportunities, you are that charismatic people person. Do you think that psychology and having that background and that degree has helped open more doors for you when it comes to expanding your business because of that relationship building process?
Well, I think maybe to a certain degree. I mean, you understand the importance, certainly coming from the pageantry world, of congeniality. And, I'm sure when you go into the interview or whatever, there's being able to build a really quick rapport with someone and find that connection with them is extremely important. And I think some basic psychological principles probably apply there. But really, I mean, I've just always been a people person. I love people. I love talking. I love listening to what people do and about their lives, and meeting all types of new people, whether it's their religious background or their home life or their career. Or I just love people. I really do. So I think that's probably more of where that comes from, but a little psychology doesn't hurt, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Out of all the, businesses and or careers that you've had so far, what's been your favorite quote unquote job title?
That's kind of hard. I definitely think BlankSpace is what I most enjoy, as far as it has the most rewarding aspects for me. Get to work with a lot of people, get to be a part of really special moments in people's lives. So whether it's their wedding or their bridal shower or their 50th anniversary or whatever it is, they always remember their time here, and it just brings me a lot of joy to make that special for them. So I don't know what I'm the owner, but I joke like my title here is janitor, because I think what I do most of is like cleaning bathrooms and mopping floors. And I'm so OCD. Like I still do all of the cleaning here after events and everything like that. So, I don't know. I just, as a whole, I think that BlankSpace is probably, that's the company that I most enjoy and probably is most aligned with what I like to do and my personality type and all of that.
I love that. Can you explain a little bit about what BlankSpace is for our listeners, especially if they're near and far, and what your vision is and or was for originally creating BlankSpace?
Yeah, is and was are two different things. So
right?
That's a great question because, right, you, especially with a scratch start, you think you know, but you don't know. So BlankSpace is basically a high-end intimate event venue. So the reason that I opened it is because I saw a huge market gap in the intimate event space. So you have your big event venues and convention centers and all of that, where people have weddings and et cetera, conferences. And then you have some smaller spaces like a community center or a Grange Hall, but there's really nothing in between to service those events that want something a little bit nicer than maybe a community space. Not that there's anything wrong with that. They certainly serve a purpose, but they don't need to spend $7,000 on the convention center. So there just wasn't anything like that. And especially in the Pinterest era and the digital age, where your bridal shower is going to be smattered all over Facebook and you want the Instagram photo op for your baby shower or whatever it is. I think aesthetic is really important. And I just saw people really wanting that look and the ability to come into a space and execute their vision. And so that was my intent with BlankSpace, is I just wanted to be able to open a space that would service that market. And I have a couple other, we have a coffee shop here. We have a workshop room, a very large outdoor space. So there's other things going on here. I kind of wanted to bring in the community aspect. I also wanted everything to be able to be open kind of 7 days a week. So rather than being like a typical event venue where you have to call and schedule an appointment to see it and all of these things, you could just come, hang out, have a cup of coffee and be like, oh my gosh, I love this space. Like I'm having my birthday party in a couple months. So it's just a very community, casual, I really bring in all of those aspects. So, it's somewhat multifaceted, but our bread and butter definitely is parties. That's just kind of what we do.
So you do really just party every day.
I really do, mostly every weekend, not every day. And I have some awesome employees, and they actually do the partying or run the events. I'm not typically here for events anymore, but yeah, that's what it is. That's if we ever stop being good at that, then I'm in big trouble.
I don't know what
we gotta know how to party.
So you kind of alluded to it when I originally asked the question, but what do you see as like the future vision and or goals of BlankSpace?
Yeah, so definitely opening a couple more locations in comparable markets. Ultimately, I want to license it. BlankSpace is a really scalable business model, so it's pretty sweet. You don't need a ton of square footage. You don't need a ton of upfront cash. You can make a nice amount of money for a really low amount of time investment. So I work at BlankSpace, maybe 10 hours a week. It just doesn't, it just is kind of that sweet little, you're not probably going to become a millionaire off of owning a location, but it's a great job for someone that loves people and loves the community and wants to have, work for themselves. And so it's a nice little gig. So ultimately that's my goal. We're working pretty aggressively to retest the concept and then ultimately be able to license it.
That's amazing. And now that we're talking a little bit more about it, I remember when I first heard about your vision and idea for BlankSpace, it hadn't even broke ground yet. I think at this point, this was probably like 3, maybe 4 years ago now. And you were trying to explain it and I'm like, okay, I can kind of visualize that. But I just am so curious. How did you see the need kind of before it even was a need? I mean,
yeah, like you and everybody.
You know what I mean? Like Instagram and all these crazy posts of the perfect Pinterest worthy baby shower or bridal party or whatever. Like, I feel like it wasn't even really hitting yet on all the social media. Yeah. So like, how did you see that need before it was really prevalent?
I mean, 2 ways. Yeah. Try walking into a bank and being like, so, I want to open this like blank space and just see what kind of looks you get. It's pretty funny, but nobody got it in the beginning.
Especially in our town, like people here don't understand how far behind the times our semi-small but kind of big community is when it comes to.
Yeah. It was literally, so what do they say? You find a problem. If you can solve it, then you likely have some type of viable business. And it was my problem. My problem was I was 25 when I opened BlankSpace and I was throwing baby showers and bridal showers. All my girlfriends were having babies and getting married. And I've always lived way out in the sticks or in an Airstream. You try throwing a baby shower in an Airstream, that don't work. But
can't fit everybody inside the Airstream, but
and nobody wants to drive out and out to my farm in the middle of nowhere. And so really my issue was I remember throwing an engagement party for a girlfriend and appearance, like fashion wise, I really could care less what I look like. But when it comes to design and like, homes or interiors or just like the aesthetic of a party or whatever, I'm just super picky. And I could just not find somewhere where I didn't feel like I just had to cover that space, like floor to ceiling. And I just couldn't find somewhere that was super cute that I wanted to, and somewhere that I didn't have to use special catering, or I could bring in, beer and wine or all of these things, just execute my own vision. Mm-hmm. And that was reasonably priced and all of that. Like, I just couldn't, there was nothing like that here. It was either like a back room at a restaurant, but then you have to eat their food, or it was just a huge venue that I didn't need that fit 500 people. And so, I figured if maybe I could solve my own problem, there might be a couple enough people that have the same problem that I at least wouldn't lose my shirt. And it turns out that I was right. So that's always a good feeling, I guess. Other people saw it. Eventually they got it right. The blank space.
Once they figured it out. Yeah. And I love now the new collaboration. There's now a coffee shop in there and I just think that's amazing. So even though apparently yesterday I had a hard time saying my order to the poor guy.
or making I don't know if that was your fault, but yeah, you and me both. I love, talk about coming to work every day and being surrounded by espresso. I'm not going to complain about that at all.
Well, I loved your little detail about, I don't remember the last time I went more than 24 hours without espresso. It's like, it got me to thinking, like, when was the last time I went more than 24 hours without coffee of some sort? And I was like, I don't even know. I don't know.
Necessities.
Coffee is life. And I just drink, like, obviously yesterday, like, I drink the most simple coffee drink. And it's very out of the norm, I guess. I'm like, I just want an Americano with nothing in it.
Oh, an Americano.
But I want it hot, and I know it's 100 degrees outside.
Yeah, 105. We've been in the heat wave.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love this. So I do want to talk about like some personal stories now that we've, got a little bit of an idea of who you are, what you do, what BlankSpace is all about, and it's not just the Taylor Swift song. And
which I didn't even know. Okay, I did not even know that there was a T Swift song called BlankSpace when I named it BlankSpace.
No way.
Try to Google BlankSpace. Guess what comes up? It's just like Taylor Swift at the I'd have had to really hit my SEO hard.
Like BlankSpace Tri-Cities, guys, not Taylor Swift.
What the heck is this BlankSpace song? But now it's kind of my theme song, so it's fine.
No, I like it. That's so funny. I thought that the song came first and then your title for BlankSpace. And I was like,
yep,
that's a cool spin on it. That's funny. See, I'm learning here too, guys, not just the listeners. So if you had to pinpoint maybe one particular instance or one moment in your life where you knew that the trajectory of your life was changing, or at least looking back, you realized that it changed, like when would that be?
Wow, great question. So I think I've had several points like that in my life. I think that my life has really aggressively changed trajectories several times. And so I think that one of those was certainly when I had my daughter, or found out that I was pregnant with my daughter. That was certainly one. She was surprised, and I was 20 years old, and still in college and all of that. So that was certainly that was probably the biggest change in trajectory for sure. I mean, you always think, oh yeah, I'll have kids, but then you're, a baby having babies. That's pretty intense. So that would be one. And then I would say like I said, I've spent a fair amount of time working for myself, whether it was, freelance designing or doing all those things. But when I opened a brick and mortar, when I moved into the brick and mortar space, that just changed everything for me. So those 2 points were very pivotal in my life, I would say. I'm sure there's a lot of other little ones, but those are the two that I can think of.
Well, that actually raises a question in my mind. Obviously, I know you have your degree. So how did you finish up school while also be preparing to become a mom? Like, how did that end up working out? I mean, obviously it worked out for the best, but like,
no, that was pretty interesting situation. And I was running at the time, I had a full ride track scholarship. And, so I ended up dropping out of college, actually. And when I had her, I think she was maybe just a couple weeks old, or a month or two or something like that. I went back to school at the same college, at my alma mater. And I just studied at night, or, when you're rocking the baby, or whatever, you find time. And I just, whenever I had time, I would study or go to class or whatever. You'll figure it out. Kids are weird. Your concept of time and determination and willpower just completely changes, I feel like, when you have a kid. I mean, not that someone can't be driven, but it just like totally goes to the next bizarre level when you have a little human that you're responsible for. So it just didn't really seem like anything was like that. Well, I need to be educated. Like, I'm going to school now because that's what I'm doing, because I got a kid, and so yeah.
If you could go back and change anything or make a different decision, would you?
I don't know that I would honestly go to school. I go back and forth about that. There's always like, we're coming into this very, like our generation, the millennial generation, it's becoming more acceptable to either take a gap year or not even go to college, or, kind of enter the career world differently. And so I don't know that I would finish school. I don't know. I have this thing about education. I really love school. I love it. So my ultimate goal is I want to have my doctorate by the time I'm 35. And so, but there's not really a purpose for that, other than like, when someone says they're going to run a marathon and they're like, I am doing this. So
like, I've set the goal in my head and I'm going to accomplish it.
That's all that it is. It's not because I think it's going to necessarily catapult me into some other realm or something. I really enjoy school and education. But I don't know. I don't know that I would go back and, just grind that hard on a degree that I don't really use. But who knows? You just never know. It's so hard. It's so hard to know. I don't know. I don't have any regrets. I don't regret it. I don't know that I would do it again. But.
Yeah. You're like, or maybe you'd take a little bit more time in between having Oakley and then going back to school.
Yeah, that was a little bit of like sleep deprivation for a solid couple of years. That rocked my world a little bit.
I don't even know how you did that, because like I look back and my years of insomnia, and I didn't even have a kid. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine dealing with that. And then having a child on top of that too.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I mean, you can relate though. You can relate. So
that's what everyone said, especially, well, it kind of bugged me when I was at the worst, and I wasn't sleeping, and somebody offhand would say something along the lines of, oh, well, you're already not sleeping. Well, now's the perfect time to have a kid. And I'm like, are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
I'm in like a whole depression right now. Don't talk to me about adding a kid on top of it. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
yeah, no, that's sort of annoying. I would be a little bit annoyed by that, but you will be perfect. You will know what it's like. You will be prepared. That is true.
That's true. Maybe that's all it's prepared me for, is like one day having a kid. So then on those sleepless nights, I can be like, hey, I'm excited because I got 4 hours of sleep last night. That's way better than only an hour.
Oh my gosh. Jeez.
Anyway, well, we talked a little bit about your college experience, and you said it's kind of a little known fact that you were a D1 college athlete, and I'm guessing that was in the track and field. You got your scholarship with that. What did like sports in general teach you, as far as like, if you look back as like, okay, it taught me this, or discipline, like what would you say that organized sports has taught you?
Oh yeah. I mean, so yes, the only sport that I'm good at is track. I'm like run straight, turn left. I have zero hand-eye coordination. I was a hurdler. And actually, so I did not really do any organized sports. My sister was more organized sports. She was a phenomenal soccer player and very athletic. I danced until I was in my teens.
And you say you don't have coordination. You got to have coordination to dance.
Well, there's like that foot eye thing maybe, but I really don't like baseball, basketball. I'm pretty good at volleyball, but I'm golf, not coordinated at all. It's that hand-eye thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing, especially with track, and I mean, you do running and all of that, is just that push. You get to a point, especially in the events that I did, and just training for them, like it sucked. Track is not fun to practice for. Like volleyball, I'll practice that all day. Track, like, get me out of here. It's not fun. I don't find it enjoyable at all. But you really have to push through a lot of pain, and I think that grit it's a different kind of grit, of course, like business or family or athletics, but it's all the same, right? You understand, you can recognize a pivotal point or your max or whatever it is, and then you understand how to push yourself beyond that, or at least you understand what's on the other side of it. And so I would say that that's, probably, if we're comparing life lessons, what I got from running.
Well, I think that's applicable to everything else that you've pursued later in life, like whether it was, getting back into school and finishing that up, or creating your dream with BlankSpace, even when banks were like telling you, no, like deciding like, okay,
you're crazy.
Like I'm going to push through this so-called, pain point and see what's on the other side. Like you just mentioned, I think that's a great way of translating life lessons from like physical sports to, adulthood. Yeah.
No, I think that sports are great, or just the team aspect or pushing yourself, or I hope that Oakley really pursues something like that, because I think it's really important in kind of shaping who you are and teaching you some life lessons before you get thrown out into the world.
Oh yeah. As a current, mom and business owner and busy woman that you are there ways that you still continue to stay active and push yourself physically nowadays?
Well, so I just signed up for a triathlon on a whim. And it's like in 2 weeks.
Like, why not?
Why not? It's a sprint triathlon, but I really don't, I'm not big into like gyms or routines, or I find it that is hard for me for whatever reason. I like sports. I like doing things. So like beach volleyball or stand-up paddleboarding, anything like that. That's how I prefer to work out.
To be more like active and enjoying it rather than
just more hiking. I've
got to go on a 10-mile run or.
Sure. Hiking, biking, lots of outdoors stuff. So that tends to be really all I've done. yeah, we were talking about it before we hopped on. I joined Orange Theory, and I'm kind of into that. But what I figured out is I'm just really competitive, and Orange Theory is competitive.
Yeah.
As is a triathlon, as is, beach volleyball or whatever. And so if I can compete, I'm normally pretty hooked. So that's my jam right now for the moment anyways. But yeah, and then just chasing a kid around.
That'll keep you active, I'm sure.
That'll burn some calories for sure. Yeah, they don't like to sit down. So.
Yeah. Well, especially this time of year when it's so beautiful out, and then they can do sports like paddleboarding or whatever it is, and
swimming and all that.
And you guys love to be outdoors, which I was wanting to ask about this. Like, where the heck did you come up with or get involved with outdoor sports, or not sports, but big game hunting? There we go. Like, how did you get into that?
Yeah. So my husband and his whole family was really big game hunters. And that's just how I got into that. And I really like it. I love being outdoors. Obviously it's neat to be able to harvest an animal and then feed your family for the rest of the year. I don't know. It's just, I very, very much enjoy it. It's the thrill of the hunt, I suppose, but it's a challenge, I guess. A thrill sounds a little bit morbid, but it's a good challenge. I don't know. I do a little bit of small, go shoot a pheasant or some waterfowl or something like that. Big game is definitely where it's at for me. But
what defines big game hunting? Like, I don't even know.
So it's like the tag, right? So, a deer or elk or bear, or I'm pretty sure that like cougar and all of that would be a big game, antelope, stuff like that.
Okay. What's been your most exciting hunt so far?
Ooh.
Story.
Okay. Well, gosh. So, I mean, the first time that you people are going to be grossed out. The first time that I hunted, I mean, that was probably the most exciting. That was the most exhilarating. I cried at least 5 times that day. Because I was so tired. You hike so much and you just chase and chase and chase. And then you spot, because you can't just shoot anything, right? It has to be legal. So, a 3-point and all of that. And you stalk and you get up close and, oh shit, it's missing a point. Or you lose it. You spook them out. Or, I mean, we had so many things. I was losing it. And we were literally leaving and we see this herd in the distance. So we end up deciding to hike over a few hills, and we scared up something and it was coming right at us. And the buck had its head turned to me, and I had been waiting all day for Tanner he's like, don't shoot until I tell you to, like all of these things, because it was my first hunt. And I was just like, nope, like I'm done. I count 3 points, 1, 2, 3. And, I hit it, and then it ran a little ways. I had to hit it again, but I got up to it. It's kind of funny, but I got up to it and it was completely missing antlers on one side.
Oh no.
So literally the side that it had turned its head towards me, I was like, oh man, this thing is a nice buck. And I got up to it and it's got like, 5 points on one side and just like a little spike on the other side. So it had lost its antlers somewhere. So it's a funny looking mount. It's a pretty funny looking
mount. Oh, you
mounted
it?
But yeah, just like a European mount. But it was my first, that was the first deer that I ever shot, and nobody brought gloves. And so, I gutted it with my bare hands, and it was pretty educational.
Oh my gosh. You are so like bad A. Like, I can't even describe it. And it's so funny because I see you and I'm like, you're a beautiful girl. You like are just so stunning every time I see you. And then you're like such a tomboy on the other side of things. It's like she goes hunting. She drives a big red Jeep. Like I just love it. I'm like, I guess I wouldn't have expected that just based on perception.
Oh, you're sweet. Thanks. Yeah, no, that's fun stuff. Everything in balance, right? I feel like it's very easy for me the outdoors is kind of what brings me back to center, and it's very easy. I'm the type of person, and you can probably relate to this because you do so many things, but I'm the type of person that can work 24/7. I love work. I am a workaholic, and it does not bother me at all. And it's very hard for me to dial myself back sometimes, and to just not get in these like zones where I am just savagely driving towards some type of business goal. And I just don't feel like it's good to live in that space for extended periods of time anyways. And the outdoors is what always kind of brings me back to center and helps me think clearly, and really just grounds me and reminds me of the things that are important to me. And I just find that very important. And so I try to really make time for that, because otherwise I'm just a maniac, I think.
Well, almost like refuels you so that you can go back and continue to produce, or
Absolutely. You're very right.
I find the same thing when I work out. Like if I'm just kind of in this weird headspace and I'm not getting things done, I'm like, okay, like let me go on a run or something and clear my head, and then I can come back and actually be more productive than I was being before.
Absolutely. Yep.
So what else kind of brings you back to center, or like brings you back to your mission? I know there's lots of organizations and nonprofits that you work with. Like what are some of your favorite organizations and or charities, and why are you passionate about serving with those groups?
Oh, sure. So locally, Rascal Rodeo is definitely, that's probably the one that I support most fervently. They're a nonprofit that puts on faux rodeos for individuals with special needs, and they're typically in conjunction with an actual rodeo. So when Horse Have Roundup comes, or all over the Pacific Northwest, many states, and rodeos that are happening, they will run a faux rodeo in conjunction with that, like the day before. I think it's typically the day before. And they have all of the events for individuals with special needs. They have horses. They have, it's a modified faux rodeo. The cowboys come. They give the participants belt buckles. And it's really neat. Ann Erica is the founder, and it actually stemmed from her senior project. And she's over a decade on the other side of it. And now it's a massive, they were Toyota 100 Cars for Good. They had got a brand new Toyota Tundra. And she's really just blown this up into epic proportions and dedicated her whole life to that. So on the one end, I just have just a massive amount of admiration for her. She's a single mom, and she just gives. And so I just love it just because of her. But then after being able to volunteer and see what they do, it is so cool. Obviously being a little cowgirl, I love horses, and I just find there's such a therapeutic aspect to that. And it's so neat that these participants get to experience that in some way, shape, or form. And like there's just a trillion stories. One of my favorite though is a participant, and he got up on a horse, and the first word that his caregiver ever heard him speak was horse. And it just brings these incredible abilities and emotions, and it's just a really neat. Sometimes it sounds like it's a rodeo for the community, and just it's just the neatest thing, and extremely dear to my heart. So that's probably the one that I spend the most time and resources on, for sure.
I love that. It reminds me of when I was able to help out at the Strides Therapeutic Horsemanship Center.
Yes.
It was for their rodeo that they put on for the kids out there, which for my listeners that aren't familiar with that, it's a therapeutic horsemanship center where they actually give lessons with horses to children that are usually on the autism spectrum, and it helps them with emotional and supportive needs, as well as the horses too, because a lot of the horses are rescue type horse situations as well. And just seeing the amount of growth in each child as they've worked with the horses out at Strides, it's just like, it's heartwarming. And I don't even work with horses myself, so I can imagine even more of the other aspect that you get to see as somebody that's familiar with working with horses and animals.
Anyway.
But I did want to ask, like, that comes back to kind of your core missions and like missions in life and your purpose. And whether it's with BlankSpace or other aesthetic work that you do, or with the Rascal Rodeo, like what would you say is your biggest mission in life? Like your big why?
That's such a good, big question. Wow.
That's what I'm all about on here, is like really having deep conversations.
Deep. So it's a little bit challenging for me to align kind of a person. I mean, my business missions are my personal missions and vice versa, but I certainly have the type of woman and example that I want to be and mother for Oakley trumps everything. And so I would say that, teaching her how to be strong and independent, but also empathetic and service oriented is really important. My big buzzword is servant leadership. And so for me, it's why I, still clean the toilets and all that stuff here. I love being able to serve others. And I think that a lot of times, especially in business, there's a lot of confusion about you have to be, a little savage, or a little, that's kind of my other buzzword, savage. I don't know why I always say that, but you have to be somebody, or you have to be, you have to
proving yourself, or
you have to have this role, you have to have this, admiration, all of these things, and people under you, and all of this, and it's very easy to get consumed with that. And I'm just as guilty as the next person. But what my heart is really serving others, and even making small sacrifices and putting others first, and showing leadership and business acumen in that sense, rather than trying to be this something, and having to push others to the wayside or climb the ladder, or all of those things that you hear in business, right, that get ahead. Servant leadership. So my mission then, if you were to put that into a mission statement, would be, I think that I want to leave a legacy that people feel like they have been brought joy or been served by some type of business that I own, or something that I've done, and it's been about putting them first rather than myself first.
Oh, I love that. Well, and it kind of brings in the whole idea of like grace, which I talked about with the name of my show being Miss Style, Strength, and Grace, and like bringing that grace not only to other people but through yourself too.
Yeah.
Are there any times where you've had to show yourself grace, or show other people grace, or been shown grace by God, or any stories you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, so I define grace as unmerited favor, essentially, which is probably a little bit more of like a spiritual definition. But I feel like Jesus gave us grace and mercy, and by dying on the cross and sacrificing himself for our sins. And so that's the ultimate representation of grace for me, of course. But I think that, that really plays into kind of my philosophy and who I want to be. It's been like the last year's been really hard for me, for sure. And I think that I've been shown grace, certainly, by other people. I think the last 6 months to a year of my life has been much more about others giving me grace than probably me giving it back. But I think that just having that in the back of your mind, that unmerited favor, is such an important principle in business, in motherhood. And it doesn't really matter. It matters how someone treats you, but if you have that core value, I think that kind of trumps everything else. And I mean, there's been a lot of times that I'm able to say sorry, or I messed up, or from little things like double booking a night at Blankspace to bigger things like hurting a friend or, something like that. So I think that the understanding that real principle of unmerited favor is extremely, extremely important, and something that I'm still working on for sure.
I think we all have to work on that no matter what, whether we're showing it to ourselves or other people. And I mean, just the other day I left Blankspace with my coffee, and I felt guilty about like getting frustrated with the worker for having to make my coffee 3 times. And I like called Blankspace. I'm like, I just want to say I'm sorry to like the poor guy that made my coffee. Like,
you're so sweet. No. But yeah, I mean, having that technically, your coffee was wrong 3 times. So, but technically you had every right to be like, what the heck? But I think that is important. Just being able to be gracious and have grace. And I think grace is also how you carry yourself and all of those things. There's a lot of things that go into grace, I think.
Well, that's actually a good segue into one of the questions. I usually say this for like my last question, but since we're on the topic anyway, I always ask my guests, what does it mean to do things with style and grace to you?
Ooh, style.
And that's very open to interpretation. Doesn't necessarily mean like style and fashion. Yeah, well, it's going to have to be open to interpretation
because yo girl ain't got no style.
Yeah, you do. You're always dressed cute. Don't even go there.
Yeah, if it's on the mannequin at Target, I buy it. That's about the only style. You know how I am. Every time I have like an important event to go to, I call you and I'm like, what do I wear? And you're always so sweet and, help a sister out. So, I mean, I think that style and grace, I would say there's definitely obviously two parts to that. I think style to me is just your own spin on things. Like forever, I don't do it as much anymore, but I would always wear hats.
You're wearing a hat right now.
Well, I am. Oh, that's true because I just got done working out. But like my big hats or my felt hats, I'm very recognizable for my hats. So I don't know. I like to have my own like sense of style, and just I think really style to me is just have like it's that confidence. It's that. So to a degree being put together, but also just that intention of like, this is who I am and this is what I like and that's what I'm going to do. And I think when you combine that with grace, to me is a way of carrying yourself and presenting yourself and acting in situations. And again, just that, I think, quiet confidence and ability to, I mean, you obviously do that very well. Sometimes I'm a little loud and I don't know, grace might not be the first word that comes to mind but yeah, I think you can it's that aura that you portray, that is, yeah, it's a little bit of confidence. It's a little bit of, I don't know, like stillness and I don't know, just poise and thoughtfulness. And when I think of women who have grace, that's kind of, I think of like almost like a princess, not in like a Kate Middleton type of, not in the sense that they are a princess, but just in every situation, they're very poised and put together, and not that they can't have fun or anything like that, but they're just so intentional about how they carry themselves. And to me, in the term of style and grace, that's what that means.
I love that. And it's so funny because every person, when I ask that question, they go a completely different route. So it's always really intriguing to me what people come up with.
Well, I always think about that though, because I am definitely tends to be like, I am the girl that will wear cowboy boots and a ball cap to like a chamber luncheon. And, I'm definitely a little bit more on the, I have tattoos and a nose ring, and I'm always a little bit more on the edgy side. I'm typically 10 years younger than anyone in the room. And so I do think about that a lot. And I really have a great admiration for people who have confidence in themselves and carry themselves a certain way and are just, identified with a certain style and poise. And I always note that and admire that in someone, and, including you, definitely.
Thank you. Well, I think it does come back to like just staying true to yourself. Like I think that's a huge portion of like not only what I try to present to the world, but what I help teach my personal clients is like, it's not about me shoving on you what I would wear or the image that I want to portray. Like it's all about being true to yourself. And that's what I try to help each woman find first, so then she can portray that to the world. So I think that's very poignant the way you put it. And I think it hit the nail on the head. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely. Great question.
So I do have some rapid fire questions as we kind of wrap up here.
All right.
So what is one thing that my listeners would be stunned to find out about you if they...
Oh, no. I feel like I already put all my cards on the table. God, I gotta think
let it all out.
I did. I know. And I have such a weird life. And now I can't think of anything like something that they would be stunned.
Well, maybe not stunned, but just surprised, or could be something quirky or some weird habit that you have that nobody really knows. I don't know.
Oh, this is a good one. Okay. So I have this. Okay. Have you heard of ASMR?
ASMR. No.
Okay. So YouTube ASMR videos. So I'm a huge night owl, and I would say maybe like a tad of insomnia. Just my mind goes and goes and goes, like not to the extent that you had, but I definitely stay up late at night. Like 1 a.m. is very common for me, and I wake up early, so I don't sleep a lot. And at night, my mind is just like, and in order to go to bed, I have found that ASMR videos are like super clutch. So it's basically, you can look up the science. It's like audio sensory response something. I don't know. But anyways, so you can Google these videos, and it's everything from certain sounds. So like maybe a makeup brush on a microphone, or a crinkle, or whispering, or all of these things. And it literally evokes. Some people have an ASMR response and some people don't have an ASMR response. I am definitely like heavy ASMR response to certain sounds. And then there's like ASMR, this almost sounds weird, but like ASMR role play. So like I can watch, you would appreciate this, like chiropractors, like cracking people's backs. And that will put me just like, I love watching that. Or like estheticians, or I mean like all of this. Is it
kind of like the people that share the videos of pimple popping?
Kind of, but not really, because, well, so that's like more of a satisfactory response, I think.
Okay.
Or just like I don't know, like a shock response or whatever. ASMR, like it is a scientific, like it's so fascinating, and it literally elicits a mental and physical response in someone that has ASMR responses. But so that's like my weird thing is like I'll fall asleep watching YouTube videos of the weirdest ASMR stuff.
I'll have to Google that, because it could be, it's almost like that white noise. Like, you know how some people can fall asleep if there's a fan going, or just that white noise, and it helps their brain kind of shut down and not think.
Very similar. This is like tingles and things like that. But it's weird, and I totally laughed at it when I first like heard about it, and then I like started watching. I was like, oh my gosh, this is my jam.
Like,
so I will fall asleep watching some weird stuff.
I love it. I'm actually gonna have to Google it now, because like if I'm having a really bad battle with insomnia and it's already like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I haven't fallen asleep, and believe me, I've like tried journaling or I'm reading by this point or whatever, and it's just not working, I have to turn on Friends on Netflix, because I practically know every single episode, because it's like the one thing I can turn on and just like shut down to, because my brain like doesn't have to worry about paying attention. It's like, oh, you already know. Yeah, Rachel and Ross get together at the end. Like it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like my brain can just literally shut down, and that is the only way I can fall asleep on those nights. Yes. And like my husband's like, how many times have you watched the whole season of Friends now? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm probably on like time around number 7 or 8, just because I finally fall asleep, and then I get up the next morning, I'm like, what episode did I watch through last night? Or like, play through, and it's like, oh, you watched all of season 6, or I don't know.
Wow.
Not that long. But anyway, so it's kind of similar.
Yeah, totally.
I love that. Are there any resources or, I don't know, life hacks that you've been binging on? Like some people go the route of like podcasts or apps or anything that's just really helped them kind of.
Yeah, totally. So fave book right now is Girl Wash Your Face, Rachel Hollis.
I just finished listening to that yesterday on Audible.
Dude, It's so good. And it's actually, I normally listen to books, but I kind of like, I'll listen to it while I'm driving and stuff. This one was so good that I actually stopped the audio and bought the paperback or the paper version and a highlighter. And like, I mean, it was like truth bomb after truth bomb, like exactly what I needed in my life right now. So that I love that. My podcasts that I like to listen to, I love NPR's How I Built This. The best episode is Sarah Blakely, who invented Spanx. Mm-hmm. And she's just, she's a badass and she's hilarious. And I just totally enjoy like listening to how people take something from concept to insane success and kind of the pitfalls along the way and all that. So How I Built This is just a good, easy listen for me. And then I love Awesome with Allison because she's just weird. And her Instagram's really fun too. She does like Move It or Lose It Mondays. And it's just like all these ridiculous dance moves. And she's just fun and uplifting and really mental health positive. And I don't know, she's just quirky and I enjoy that. I don't know about any other like hacks. I don't know. I mean, those are the things that I do on a regular basis. I don't know that pertain to, I don't know, better self-improvement or something like that. I don't really know that there's anything else other than like coffee and outside and my ASMR videos. Oh God.
I'm gonna have to Google those now. ASMR. I made a little star by that on my notes because I'm gonna go back and watch them and be like,
we'll find a good one and like put the link in the podcast.
Like, here's my favorite ASMR video, guys. Check out today's show notes.
Anyways, those are kind of what I'm feeling. Going to church, that's important to me too. So and music. I like playing guitar and stuff like that. So I think some type of something that sort of transports your brain outside of its normal regimen of thinking about, I could just think about business a lot and stuff like that. So for me, music is really big, but yeah.
And she's a really talented musician, FYI. She can sing and she can play the guitar. You have a beautiful voice. I've heard some of the things you've posted. I love that. So usually my last question was about the style and grace, which we already covered. I'll end with this one. If you could go back and give your 16-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't put so much importance on the works that other people see. That would be what I would tell my 16-year-old self, because I still tell my 28-year-old self that. Do everything that you can to have the self-confidence and just self-awareness of what you need to be happy, and don't get so caught up in doing things that are stereotypically applauded or noticeable or awarded or all of those things. I definitely, like, if I had to pick a weakness in myself, like the number one thing would be I am just extremely works conscious and works based. And so the struggle all the time is balancing things that I know will elicit a response or adoration or success, and just doing them because I know that I can do it and I'll be good at it, versus doing things that truly make me happy and better the lives of the people around me, like my daughter or something like that. So I think that's what I would tell, just be really conscious of your motivation behind doing things, and be okay with, if you don't want to do track, it doesn't matter if you're going to be a state champion, don't do it. If you hate it and it makes you miserable and you come home and, fight with your parents about it or, whatever it is, something like that, then don't do it. Do something that makes you happy.
Yeah. Rather than doing things out of a sake of obligation.
Obligation, or because you're being fed by the response of others. It's like, just like girls that feel like they have to always look perfect or again, I'm talking more to myself, but, be okay with bucking the norm. If it makes you happy, if, you want to have a nose ring, but people are like, well, you can't really sit on this board if you have a nose ring, but you want to, that's a trivial example. But I think that just not doing things because you want to be something or somebody, and really just doing the things that bring you joy and make you a better person and the people around you better people. That is the struggle always. And I've always struggled with that. And that's what I would probably remind my little teenager self.
Oh, I love that. And I think that's kind of a perfect way to wrap up today's interview.
Yeah.
Well, where can my listeners find more about you or possibly find more information about BlankSpace, how to book with you, all the places to find you online?
Yeah, for sure. So apparently I have a LinkedIn. I didn't know about that. I like how you're like,
does anybody use
like
LinkedIn?
Your LinkedIn bio. And I'm like, my LinkedIn bio? I have a LinkedIn? No. So, Instagram is where, like, personally, so I'm Liv, Liv_Berg, BERG, like iceberg, _ design. I think that's what I am. Liv Berg Design with underscores on Insta. And of course, BlankSpace, you can find us at BlankSpaceTriCities.com or on Facebook, on Instagram. If you're in Eastern Washington and you like to throw a good party, holla at your girl. That's basically it. I do a lot of stuff on Instagram and like to share my weirdness on there. So
I love it. I always love seeing what your stories and everything are on Instagram and Facebook. And just for listeners too, if they are curious, not only about throwing a party at BlankSpace, but you also host like workshops and other events too. So it's not just limited to like the entertainment parties. So
definitely.
Be aware of that.
All the things.
You gotta do all the things. You can just meet up with a friend for coffee at BlankSpace.
Yeah, just don't order a hot Americano.
Apparently not. With room.
We'll hook you up. Awesome. Very good. That was so fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming.
Hey ladies, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. To help empower more women, please be a doll and rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. For show notes and other free resources we mentioned today, go to styledbydeidra.com.